Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure. Will you notice today I have not one, but two guests. Welcome Laura Berland and Evan Harrel. I will tell you about each of them. As you know, this show focuses on grace. And one of the attributes of grace is compassion. And Laura and Evan have a very special interest in this because they created the Center for Compassionate Leadership. And I am thrilled to death to talk about them. So to talk with them and about them. So let's jump in. I want to tell you a bit about Laura. She's the founder and executive director for the Center for Compassionate Leadership. She's a weaver, I like that word, of transformative organizations and experiences. She's a tech entrepreneur by trade and a Fortune 500 executive. She also helped Neil deGrasse Star Talk Science and Media Network into a top podcast. Way cool. Then she founded the Center for Compassionate Leadership, and she is joined by Evan Harrel, who's the co-founder and CEO of the Center for Compassionate Leadership. He leads the thought leadership efforts and integration of science and business research into the work of the center. He is a former investment banker and lots of other great things. So welcome, Laura and Evan. First question. Laura, what made you want to develop this center? What was the impetus for it?
Yeah. Thank you, John, for having us. And we're so delighted to be here and to be with your audience. You know, I spent the first 20 years or so of my business career really following this crazy path of money and power and recognition. It was all ego-based. And
you're not looking at me, are you? No.
No. Or anybody else. Yeah. But you know, in 1980, this was the way of the world for a lot of us. And you know, that was what I thought success looked like. And so I'm running, and then bam, I hit a wall. I hit a very traumatic life event. And it just, you know, flip my whole world around, flip my entire world around. I started looking at my inner life. I started learning to be aware, to be awake, to be understanding and caring and connecting. So these things really became prominent in my life. And I recognized that the more I practiced, and I went on a healing path of meditation and yoga, embodiment, the more I practice in this part of my inner journey, the better my outer journey became, my work life, my business sense. And I just became a better leader and a better human. I'm like, well, you know, why aren't these two things together? And frankly, after the 2016 election, I felt compelled to like, what can I do to really be of service in a bigger way? Because I was teaching and doing lots in the meditation world, but like, how can I expand the impact of these compassionate practices so that the world that was really, and still is at this moment of crisis and chaos, we need this as humans, as part of our survival and our growth and a way to thrive.
Great. So Evan, you played a key role in this because you're the co-founder of the center. So what are the goals of the center?
Primarily, we want to be a catalyst for compassionate action in the world. We want to bring more compassion out in ways that will just keep rippling and spread throughout the world. So the way we're trying to do it is by using leaders, is that medium, the leaders who have the ability to help impact cultures, impact entire groups of people, creating compassionate cultures that will then empower their teams to also be compassionate. And we're
go ahead.
No, I was going to just say we do it through one community, what we're doing right here, right now, trying to be with other people, with connecting and sharing our shared goals. We try to do it with education and curriculum. We have training programs that help to bring it out into the world. And we try to do it through research. We've had some small research projects to date and are continuing to grow those. And then finally, through thought leadership, again, with thought leaders like you, trying to see where we can be on the leading edge of leadership development and compassion.
That's wonderful. So I'm going to back up and get real basic here. Other than the C in grace, and I write it, being compassion, how do each of you or jointly define what is compassion and what's compassionate leadership?
So I'll start. I mean, we view compassion in a very traditional sense. It is the awareness of the suffering of others coupled with the desire to help relieve that suffering. And compassionate leadership is bringing that compassion to the teams you work with, but much more than that, creating cultures of compassion so that you help remove the causes of suffering. There are, incredible stresses in the world, especially today, that are creating suffering in the workplace, and create cultures of compassion that allow people to flourish. It's not just about, it is about addressing specific incidents of trouble or stress or anxiety, but it's about creating cultures of compassion that will help change it so that those will just de-escalate.
Yeah, and I would just love to add that it is really unleashing the potential of each individual in the hive, wherever that organization.
I'm not a bee. Although I know a beekeeper, and he rakes great honey, and he's a good friend.
Yeah. I mean, this is the world we live in now, that we all have to really work synergistically together and support each other, but to reflect to each other what our great potential is, and to create environments in organizations as leaders that recognize the unique gifts and potential of each individual and how they can contribute, and then how it gets all woven together.
Now, Laura, you come from a background, or if you mentioned meditate, and you've done a lot of work in yoga and things, and I've had on this program a few people who are either psychiatrists or psychologists who teach meditation and practice it. So does part of compassionate leadership come from an inside out approach?
Absolutely. I mean, we kind of have that as our inner mantra, teaching from the inside out, because we do believe that the inner work, the inner job is fundamental. And so many people skip right over that. I did for the first 20 years. I was chasing all this outer stuff, sure, as if that was where the juice was, and the reward was. The reward is in here. It's in our hearts. It's in our connection. It's in our depth. And we can't get there unless we sort of clear away a lot of the chaos that's circling around, especially in today's, alert, high alert.
Yeah.
We have to quiet down. That's the only way.
Now, Evan, you talked about the times we've been through. This program was born in that grace under pressure. We're all feeling that pressure. So in compassion, two friends of mine, Chester Elton and Adrian Gostick, just wrote a new book about anxiety in the workplace. So do you have programs, or is that anxiety on your wavelength as we talk about compassion? So.
Anxiety is on our wavelength. One of the things that we focus on is what Dan Siegel calls the window of tolerance. We all have a band where we are able to function at our highest level without being hyperstimulated, where we move into fight or flight mode, or being hypostimulated, where we just simply freeze. And part of the problems in the workplace that are arising out of stress and anxiety, the burnout issues, arise because of the inability to create cultures where people are able to stay in that range. Now, sometimes, like with the pandemic, for medical professionals, it's very, very hard. They are just under stressed because of the external factors over which they really can't control. But leaders can control so much of the workplace through how they communicate, through how they organize work, through how they empower their staff. And all of that can then help address the issues that the anxiety issues that you're talking about.
Laura, take that communication angle. When we say communication in the compassion sense, are we speaking words, actions, or both?
Oh, I love that question, John. It's kind of the communication you can see, the words that you hear, the facial expressions that you notice, and we're tuned into that as humans. But there's so much more that we can't see and that we don't hear out loud, but is energetic and is part of our whole being. But it all goes like so unseen and unheard in so many environments. So we really have to tune in at an entirely different level to sort of feel and resonate with the people that we interact with.
One of the things that I think I certainly say grace and compassion being a component of that, at least in my scheme of things, is connectedness. And so now that we're coming back into the world, and slowly, we're not out of this pandemic yet, but how have you seen leaders connect more effectively in these times? Either of you.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I feel that the essence of who we are as a human species has never been more exposed, right? We've all been through this massive collective experience, traumatic for many of us, full of grief, full of sadness, full of challenge. And it has also sort of knocked down these walls of separation of, oh, my work life's over here, my family, business, personal life is over here. So bringing us together and making us exposed, all of us in the same way at the same time, has been transformative. And I think that has allowed us to connect on such a deeper, more heartfelt level than ever before.
Great. And Evan, I want to, before I jump in, or excuse me, before I forget, I want to, programs. What specific programs do you have that our audience would be interested in learning about? So.
Our primary program is an 8-week program in compassionate leadership and resilience. And we're offering that this fall in 2 different groups. One focused specifically on global health, which is an area we have trained in extensively, as well as for general audience of leaders, people in education, in finance, in coaching, in a wide range. Tech, thank you. Yes. So that's our primary program. We also we're doing although it's focused for the American Society on Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. It's actually a 4-hour workshop in 2 weeks that we offer. And yes, Laura.
And on July 15th, quarterly, we do a Global Compassion Gathering. It's a free community hour for people to come together, and our guest presenter a week from Thursday will be Scott Shute, who's the head of mindfulness and compassion at LinkedIn. So it should be a juicy hour. And we also have time for leaders to connect and talk in small groups after we practice with Scott. And I think those are the moments that people cherish the most, just to get into the small room and really open up.
Oh, that's wonderful. In my world as an executive coach, so many people come to us or coaching and they go, well, I can use that, but I don't have time for it. So I'm going to think also it's a topic of grace. Yeah, it's okay, but does it really apply to me? And I think it's your life journey, Laura, is something like this. You had an experience that opened you up to a different thing. Do you find that people come to compassion in different ways? So.
Yes, absolutely. So much of what we see right now in the wake of the pandemic is exhaustion, burnout, high stress, anxiety, loneliness, isolation. Those would be some of the key drivers of the moment. And as leaders are learning to grow in the kind of fast-paced environment we live in now and change it, like, how do I ride that wave of change? It's you can't grab on and hold it static because nothing is. So you have to be agile and really get moving. And part of why people are learning that compassion is this essential skill, and a host of related skills as well, is to be present and create trust and connectedness in those environments, because it's those human elements that persist as opposed to all the other things that keep shifting.
Now, Evan, in the program that you described, which is your core course or one of the key ones, compassion and keyword, one of the top words now, resilience. And I've had a number of folks on here from special forces, physicians, all the time coming, psychiatrists talk about resilience. How do you approach it? I have a theory that resilience is like a muscle. We have to use it, otherwise it atrophies. Is that a perspective that you embrace or teach? So.
I think that resilience is like a muscle, and the more we use it, the stronger it becomes. I think that the enemy of resilience is a desire to be invulnerable. And resilience requires us to say, I want to get better. I want to bounce back. But if I'm focused on being invulnerable, to do that, I have to admit some chink in the armor, that there's something that needs to be repainted or something that needs to be resanded. And if I've created this persona, which gets more and more likely the higher you rise in leadership, if I've created this persona of invulnerability, well, then I don't need to be resilient because I don't have to bounce back. And so if you can practice resilience, if you can practice a growth mindset, being willing to say, okay, man, this situation stinks, and how am I going to learn from it? Instead of this situation stinks, oh, why am I such an idiot? And it's a whole practice.
Great. I've came across an interesting definition shared to me by a friend of mine, Jessie Lynn Stoner, who was quoting her colleague, Elaine McDarg, about I've always thought of resilience as bouncing back, from adversity. But we're actually bouncing forward. Because we got knocked down and the world is different. And in a grand scheme, macro sense, boy, have we been through that, because we're not going back to 2020. And so resilience, in a sense, is more important than ever. Would you not say
that may be that? I was going to say that may be the gift of this pandemic, is it helps strip away this illusion that we are invulnerable. Because let's face it, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all ultimately invulnerable. And the sooner we recognize that, the sooner we can just take the setbacks with more equanimity, with more acceptance, which has got nothing to do with being passive. It has to do with being realistic.
No, it's a powerful thought. And I think, too, that one of the things, a friend of mine, Cynthia Burnham, works a lot with presence. And she says about in our Zoom world, with the last 15 months, we're all equal. We're all the same size. And in a way, for a CEO, at least initially, before he or she went back to the office, they were the same size as the frontline worker with whom they communicated. So in a way, we've all been knocked down a peg and revealed our intimacies with our home or wherever our situation was. So that in a sense is a different perspective that contributes to our vulnerability. Would you not agree? So.
Yes, indeed. And presence. I love that you brought up presence, because leadership presence is everything. And it has nothing to do with, I was in the corner office over here and now I'm on this little square in the Zoom screen. It is what emanates from the inside out. It is the resonance that people feel with you in terms of your love and appreciation and humanity, and how you respect and treat another human. And great leaders have this, regardless of whatever their title or footprint is.
Right. Oh, presence is very important. It's something I coach a lot on. So the center's been up and running for a little over 2 years. What's the biggest takeaway that people come away from if they experience your programs? What do they tell you?
I'll start. I mean, there's a lot, and I'm sure Laura has a lot more to add. But I think one of the most important things is that compassion is innate in all of us. We all have this capacity, and this is something that's shown in research, that children younger than 2 years old exhibit compassion. And it's
I have a 2-year-old grandson, and I can attest to that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's teachable, because at some point we have a tendency to get caught up in the values of the world, and we lose some of that compassion. But yet it's still there, and we can tap right back into it if we want to. And then finally, I would say that it's great for everyone. It's great for the people offering compassion. It's great for the people receiving compassion, which, by the way, can be the same one when you're offering self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great for organizations and teams that are able to operate in a culture of compassion. And it's great for the greater world. Laura,
did you want to add to that? I have a thought, and I'm so glad, and Laura, I'll throw this to you then. Self-compassion, and I think leaders really need this a lot, because as you had spoken earlier, Evan, about this sense of projecting invulnerability, it's projecting, but it's not real. And part of that, I think, is a lack of self-compassion. Do you have a thought on that, Laura?
Absolutely. This is really the essence of why we start from the inside out. Because if you're not comfortable in your own skin, if you're not able to turn compassion toward yourself, to use the L word, to really love yourself, it's almost, you will think that you're able to share this with others, and yet there's something lacking in the equation, because we all need to really be fully expressed, to be whole. And we don't find that anywhere else than inside. It's nice to think that some great thing can reflect on me and make me feel good, but no, the real truth is that it's all deep inside ourselves. So we have to unearth that sense of beingness, of presence, as you said, and really learn to take care of our own sustainability. And it is from that deep well. When Evan said compassion benefits everyone, it's a well that keeps refilling us. We replenish, and never in history in our lives have we needed to do that as much as we need to do now.
Without question, we all need more compassion, and I like the self-compassion. Let's give ourselves a break, and things like that. So you have a statement that you talk about. You make a difference that I wouldn't have thought about, but the difference between compassion and empathy. Either of you wish to explain that difference?
Sure. Empathy is when we resonate emotionally with someone else, when we actually feel what they're feeling. And that can be positive when we celebrate when someone else has a positive event, and it can be when we feel the suffering of another. When we're talking about compassion, as we defined earlier, which is the awareness of the suffering of someone else and hoping to relieve it, that empathy specifically becomes the empathy of experience and resonating with the suffering of another. Compassion takes that and layers on action. Compassion is the second part of that definition, which is the desire to help relieve the suffering of another. And what's very interesting is that neurological research shows that empathy arises in a different part of the brain than compassion. You can observe empathy in the pain centers of the brain. Compassion arises in the reward center. So this distinction is not a trivial one. This is not just about wordsmithing. It has significant impact on how you deal in the workplace with people who deal with suffering on a daily basis. It helps impact burnout. It's very important in the caring industries, but it's important for anyone who cares and anyone who can experience the suffering of another.
There's an interesting thought that I came to mind when you talked about from neuroscience and the compassion arising from the reward, which made me think that we get pleasure from acting compassionately with others. Laura, do you have a perspective on that?
Absolutely. I mean, the science now shows us that's true, but innately that's what we all know. That's right. That brings us to life. That gives us purpose. That gives us meaning. That's why we're here, to be of service, because we reap the own reward within ourselves, as well as knowing that we're benefiting others.
And if I can add one other thing.
Absolutely.
We also benefit from even seeing someone else offer compassion to a third person. So it's the people receiving it, people offering it, and anyone who sees it. It's very powerful.
I like to say that grace is generative. Once we do it, we keep doing it. Would you say the same of compassion? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful, virtuous circle that just goes around and round. And I love all that you've said about grace, because it really is so perfectly aligned with the circle of compassion that we focus on.
Well, that's great. And we are coming, sadly, to the end. And I always ask our guests a story of grace or something. And I know, Evan, you have an example, and I think you do too, Laura. You want to go first, Evan? So.
Sure. I remember when I was in middle school. I grew up in Texas, and many of people are well aware of the story of the Alamo, which has mythic quite literally mythic proportions.
In Texas, it does.
And I had a coach in 8th grade, and at the time, it was the beginning of the bubbling up of many of the issues surrounding the tensions related to the oppression of Hispanics in Texas. Mm-hmm. And the coach said to me, he said, "Evan, just want you to think, maybe everything that you've heard about the Alamo might not be right." And that's pretty much all he said. Mm-hmm. But what was so powerful, and it was so powerful that here we are, and I'm not going to say how many decades later, but it's more than 1 or 2 decades later.
2 decades later.
Is that he met me right where I was, knowing that I was a proud white Texan who was, loved the story of the Alamo, and just said, "Hey, open your mind that maybe there's more to the story than what you know." And he planted a seed which allowed me to then be open in completely unthreatening ways, and allowed me as an individual to grow. And he just offered the grace of accepting me exactly as I was, and finding that place where he could meet me and offer something that I was able to receive. And I've been harvesting the fruit of that ever since.
What a great story. Laura?
My first meditation teacher that I went to after this traumatic event 20 plus years ago, she saw me in a way that no one had ever seen me before. she recognized there was the essence of this beautiful being beneath the brokenness, beneath the grief, beneath the sadness, beneath the immobilization, you know, beyond everything. It wasn't about this outerward facing person. It was like, what was inside of me? Nobody had ever really helped me understand that there was this world deep inside. So I am forever grateful for her presence in my life and helping me understand that we can reflect for each other the grace within us.
Great stories from both of you. And there's a theme that I draw upon, and grace is a form of connectedness. And with you, Evan, your teacher, coach, saw something in you that you're ready for this. And Laura, your coach, your teacher saw something in you beyond what you had experienced and how you could be healed from this. So that's grace. So it's wonderful. How can people find you?
The center's website is the center's website, centerforcompassionateleadership.org. We're a nonprofit, and on many social channels at Being Compassion. And please come visit us on LinkedIn or the website or read the newsletter. However you'd like to participate in the community would be lovely.
Great. And I will put those notes into the show description so people will see the website. And I am a subscriber to your newsletter, and I will attest that it is a wonderful wonderful form of communication. So thank you both. Laura Berland, Evan Harrel, it has been a joy to have you on the show. Thank you both. And with that, we will exit. So
thank you, John.
Thank you, John.